You have 5 seconds to land that drone. The Royal Guard's voice cut through the air like a crack of thunder, shattering the usual calm surrounding Buckingham Palace. Tourists froze mid-snap, cameras raised, mouths hanging open. No one expected a guard, usually statuesque and silent, to speak, let alone shout. But above him, a sleek black drone buzzed ominously, hovering too close, its camera locked on his face, recording every breath. For a moment, the guard didn't flinch. His tall frame, stoic in red and black, didn't sway under the famous bearskin hat. But his eyes, they tracked the drone with military precision. It wasn't just a nuisance, it was a threat. The crowd murmured, unsure whether to laugh, record, or run. "Is this part of the show?" someone whispered. "Why is he moving?" another gasped. Because royal guards weren't supposed to move, not for tourists, not for provocation, definitely not for drones. But this one did. One step forward, then another, slow, measured, commanding. His gloved hand hovered near his belt, not his rifle, but something else. "This is your final warning," he growled, low enough to sound deadly, loud enough to silence the giggling tourists. Tension gripped the crowd, even the pigeons froze. The drone didn't budge. Instead, its lights blinked faster, taunting. Then, just as it started to ascend, aiming for escape, a sharp hiss ripped through the air. A flash of silver shot upward. The crowd collectively gasped. The drone jolted mid-air, trapped, netting wrapped tight around its rotors as it crashed harmlessly to the cobblestone. The guard had launched it. A concealed counter-drone device, standard issue only for high-risk posts, but rarely, if ever, used. The crowd erupted. Gasps turned into cheers. Applause echoed off the palace walls. Someone yelled, "That was sick," and a little boy pushed through the railing, eyes wide with admiration. "Sir, that was amazing." The guard, eyes still locked on the grounded drone, let the smallest flicker of a smile pass. He nodded, just once, then resumed his post, back to stone-faced discipline, as if nothing had happened. What the tourists didn't know was this. The drone wasn't a toy. It had been seen circling various high-profile landmarks that week, always hovering just a bit too long, always just out of reach. Authorities suspected surveillance, maybe worse. The guard's sharp eyes and even sharper instincts had likely prevented a serious breach. Inside the palace, officials scrambled. Intelligence teams flooded the feed. Security systems lit up like Christmas. Later, when tech experts reviewed the footage, they were stunned. "No human should have reacted that fast," one analyst said. "That was precision intercept, military level." And it was. What they didn't know was that this particular guard wasn't just ceremonial. Before the palace post, he'd served in counter-terrorism, trained in electronic warfare, fluent in intercept tech. Most of his service record was classified. But here, on tourist duty, he stood silent, until he didn't. Years ago, during a combat mission, he lost a friend, taken out by a weaponized drone. He'd vowed never again. That promise lived under the silence, beneath the uniform, behind the unblinking eyes. Every step, every breath, every second on duty was rooted in that loss. He didn't speak, not because he couldn't, but because he was always listening. When the drone came, he didn't hesitate, not out of instinct, but out of memory, out of duty, out of an oath only he remembered. By the end of the day, the clip had gone viral. Millions watched the Royal Guard's takedown. "This is the most British superhero ever," one user commented. "I thought these guys weren't even allowed to blink," another joked. But under the memes and shares, something deeper stirred, a realization. These weren't just props in funny hats. They were protectors, trained, tested, trusted. The next morning, officials confirmed the drone had breached 3 restricted fly zones. It had sophisticated surveillance tech, suggesting it was more than a hobbyist's gadget. No one claimed ownership, but it didn't matter. The message was clear. Someone tested the line, and it didn't budge. And as for the guard, he resumed his post the next morning, silent, unmoving. Tourists snapped photos, whispered theories, pointed phones at him, hoping for another moment. But he stayed still, until needed. Moral of the story: in a world obsessed with novelty, never underestimate the strength of tradition. Behind every uniform is a person with purpose, and sometimes the quietest figures hide the loudest stories. As the sun set on Buckingham Palace that evening, the same little boy stood behind the barrier with his father. He saluted. The guard didn't move, but a flicker of acknowledgement glinted in his eye. A moment, a memory, a message. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel and hit that like button and drop a karma in the comments below.